Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good evening, everyone. Today we are going to start the third lecture on Dhamma Vinicchaya, a lecture series conducted based on the most renowned book of Dhamma Vinicchaya, written by late Renukane Chamdavimala. So far we have discussed 5 questions, 5 questions, and the book contains altogether 100 questions and discussions about very imperative and interesting topics. So today's, I think all of you got the handout which I shared. This is the same handout I have shared in the previous lectures, because in this handout there are 10 questions. So after finishing the 10, we'll go to a new handout starting from number 11. So today's, I am planning to do 2 questions today. Number 6 would be, in a sutta, when explaining his status, the Buddha referred to himself as appatimo, as he has no statue. This raises the question, is it appropriate to consider the statues as temples, as statues in temples as Buddha statues? So because when he express his status, like his nature, his quality, Buddha used a word called appatimo. There is no one resembling or equal to him, who could replace him, who could act as a replica. So if this has been directly said by the Buddha himself, is it correct, or is it can we justify this usage or making of sculptures or Buddha statues as we do today? That is the obvious question. And then the next question would be, when did the tradition of making Buddha statues begin? Did Buddha statues exist while the Buddha was alive? It's also a valid question, and we'll be analyzing these two now. So first of all, the number 6 question. Appatimo. What did Buddha mean by the word appatimo? So there is no statue of him. So what is the meaning of a patima? Appatima, it comes from the word patima. Patima. And then we add the na, indeclinable. It's not a prefix actually, it's an indeclinable, which changes into a. An actually, an. Then, so a. Then because of the influence of the Sanskrit word pratima, because the Sanskrit word is pratima, its counterpart is pratima, because of this pr, r is assimilated to p, and the double p starts to appear when we connect a vowel at the beginning. So patima is rendered into English as a statue. What is the function of a statue? Statue is a resemblance of someone or something. Because when we don't have the capacity or possibility of keeping the exact person or representing the body of the exact person or the body of something, what we do is we make a statue in its place, resembling or referring to that. So the patima refers to someone who is equal, something which is equal, or someone who is equal. Then appatima means there is no one who is equal to the Buddha. This appatimo doesn't mean that there cannot be a statue of the Buddha. What he meant in the sutta was, there is no person or no living being who is equal or even similar to myself. That's what he meant. Therefore, the word appatimo cannot be used as a reference or a fact to negate or to disprove the argument about Buddha statues. That cannot be used against the culture of creating Buddha statues, because the real purpose of using that term is to show that there is no person or no living being who could act in the place of the Buddha, or who is similar to the Buddha. That is the main purpose of that word usage. So therefore, if someone says that Buddha has said there cannot be, he is appatimo, doesn't mean that you cannot make a statue of him. So it's actually if someone uses this argument, it's because of the lack of knowledge in how to understand or how to interpret the words in the sutras. So I'll first read the answer, and then on the way at each place I'll give you the explanations. The term appatimo signifies that no one in the world has a body figure similar to the Buddha's. So there is no one who is similar to him in his body figure, because he had the 32 body parts of a great being, of a great man. So and even a Chakravarti could possess the 32 body parts, but he would eventually be a universal wheel turning monarch, but his 32 body parts would be different, like in terms of its majesty would be lower than that of a Samma Sambuddha. So obviously Buddha possessed, according to our tradition, the greatest handsome, good-looking body a being could ever have. It even surpasses the body or figure of a Deva and of a Brahma as well. So the Appatimo states that there is no one who is similar to Buddha in his body figure. So this Appatimo is not used referring to used in order to indicate that there cannot be a statue of the Buddha. Obviously, you cannot make a statue exactly similar to the Buddha. That's also an obvious fact, because when we don't know about anyone, when we are creating a statue of a person whom we have not seen, because statue is created by a human being, or even if it's created by AI, it does it with the information that we feed into it. And especially when a sculpture is made, it's done by some artist. So if the artist has not seen the person with his direct experience, so there is no way that you could make it exactly the same only by listening to the wordings or statements or given information given about him. Because especially when it comes to the great signs of a man or a male, what we do is, looking at the information, we create an image in our mind and we try to assume this may be the this is how he may have looked. But if you go into minute details of this figure, it's very difficult. It could be that when three people imagine the Buddha's body just by listening to the information, forget about it. For instance, if there were no Buddha statues, and if what we had was the pure information from the books, would we, for example, create a Buddha statue? If we were given the chance and if we had the exact capacity to create what we feel in our minds, for example, as a thought experiment. So if we could put our image into a figure, would it be the same? That's an obvious question. So because there can be very minute details that are different in each other's imagination, because we do possess different characteristics, different dispositions, we have different personalities. So therefore the image that we create in our mind by listening to some information could never be the same, because that was given in the example is given in one commentary. When three or four monks were listening to the same sutra or same discourse given by the Buddha, then they questioned each other, how did they feel about this piece of teaching. So, and one would say he felt it as a huge tree that would give shade to any being who comes into it, and also would shelter many living beings. And for some, it felt as a river running down from a very high mountain. For some, it may be felt as a great forest. So therefore, even listening to the same discourse, the idea that comes to our mind differs based on our personality. So therefore, if there were no Buddha statues, because what we do is we try to copy the statues that were made by our ancestors or the previous generation. So therefore, there is a resemblance in all the Buddha statues that were there since ancient times. There is some kind of a similar feature that we can recognize that this is a Buddha statue by just looking at it. And the thing is, if we were given only the information without any exposure to the Buddha to a Buddha statue, what type of sculpture would we would make in such an occasion? I feel like there can be minute changes in the details of the body of the Buddha, because not everything is explained. They are explaining the main figures and the sub figures of the Buddha's body. But still, when it comes to reality, there are subtle changes that we will not be able to assume. So therefore, now when someone is creating a Buddha, obviously, what I wanted to say was, we'll never be able to create a Buddha statue similar to the Buddha just looking into the information that we have. This is common to any person. For example, if we hadn't have the figure of great Alexander the Great, I don't know whether the figures that we have in Greek statues are really his figures. I'm not sure about that, but there are some figures resembling Alexander the Great. Just listening to his accounts about him, would we be able to create a figure that is exactly like him? That's very unlikely. It's very unlikely. So this is common to any person. When we are creating a statue, just going through the information that we have without having a visible exemplar, then we'll always have some difficulties in making it exactly as the same thing, so the same person. So now the Buddha statues that we have can never be same, can never be similar to the real Buddha. Obviously, it cannot be unless there was a Buddha statue created while the Buddha was alive, and the artist was very skillful, and he could make it very similar to the actual Buddha. And if the latter statues were made based on that, looking at that, then we can assume that the Buddha statues we have some sort of resemblance to the exact Buddha. I hope you got my idea. For example, if the original first Buddha statue was made while the Buddha was alive, or someone who has seen the Buddha, at least after his parinibbana, from someone who has seen the Buddha, either with his direct eyes, or flesh eyes, or with his divine eye, or anything like looking into the past lives. So someone who had a direct experience with the Buddha's body would create it. Then the remaining statues were made based on that. Then we can see that there can be some sort of resemblance. But if the first statue was made just based on the information that we have, it's very unlikely that the Buddha statue would resemble the actual Buddha. So that's another important point. We'll be discussing this also. There was even the Brahmins. Now, thing is, I'll read from the beginning. The term appatimo signifies that no one in the world has a body figure similar to the Buddha. There was even a Brahmin who tried to measure the Buddha's height but failed in his attempt. We have a story, if my memory was correct, it is in the commentaries. Then one time one person wanted to measure the exact height of the Buddha. Obviously he had a specific height, and the thing is, the tradition says it cannot be measured into its exact precision. You cannot measure it precisely. That's the point here. Otherwise, it doesn't mean that the Buddha had a limitless or unlimited size in his body. Obviously, he was a human being and it had a certain size, but it cannot be measured in high precision or accurately by someone else. So therefore, one person came with a stick, a bamboo stick, while the Buddha was traveling, like walking, and the literature says when he kept the stick, it was just to the height of the Buddha's knee or below the knee. Then next day he brought a stick of the size of the double or 4 times. I forgot the exact story, but then it didn't pass the Buddha's knee. So due to a certain unexplainable or some kind of miraculous event, I think the Buddha didn't do it purposefully. As a miraculous event that was taking place, he was unable to, even how long the stick was, he was making it, extending the stick, size of the stick, but he was still unable to measure the Buddha's body. So that was the story. So I think right. So there was even a Brahmin who tried to measure the Buddha's height but failed in his attempt. If it is not possible to measure the Buddha's height, how could the sculptor create a statue that exactly resembles him? Obviously, it cannot be done. It is simply not possible. It's simply not possible. The Buddha statues we have today do not look exactly like the Buddha. They even differ in appearance. Even the Buddha statues we have are different in their appearances. However, all of these statues can be recognized as representing the representations of the Buddha due to certain common features. How the hair is being made, how the nose and the face, how the look of the body or look of the face, and also even just having the face, we'll be able to recognize that this is a Buddha statue. So there are some kind of common features in almost every Buddha statue, and it differs according to the country as well. Most probably it seems because people do make statues based on their own experience. So people in different countries, when in their nature, like in their mind, the idea of a human is basically based on the experiences or the beings they have seen in their country or motherland. So therefore, in most of the cases, so we see here contrasting or we see obvious differences in the Buddha statues made in different countries, but still is recognizable that all are Buddha statues. If you have gone to India, and if you are from India, I think you may also have noticed that Jain Mahavira statues are also somewhat similar to that of the Buddha. But still, as he lived naked life, you could see his male organ in it. But in the appearance, it is somewhat similar, and you can easily get misled, or you could easily misunderstand that to a Buddha, because I myself got like miscalculated or misunderstood or had a misperception looking into the Jain Mahavira statues, but initially I thought those are Buddha statues. They are very, very close to in their appearance. So anyhow, therefore, but still we have common features, and it's very obvious to all of us that we will never be able to create a Buddha statue that is exactly like him. It is not only impossible to make a Buddha statue that is exactly like him, but it also impossible to sculptors, I don't know how to pronounce this word, sculptors to create an accurate statue of any person they have never seen. obviously. The purpose of making a statue of a person or depicting an event is not to create an exact replica, but to invoke an idea or impression of that person or event in the minds of others who view it. So that is obviously, that's the purpose. Now, we all know we'll never be able to make a replica as it is, but with the today's technology, yes, and with the photographing, we'll be able to create replicas very similar to the actual person, especially with the usage of AI and high technology. Yes, it can be done, and some wax statues are made in some countries, like they really, you feel like that you can easily get misled thinking that this is the real person. There are some museums even, but like if you have, that is because we have exactly seen the person, and if we are depicting a historical event or a person that we have not seen, the purpose is not to say or not to make others believe that that person exactly looked like him, but to invoke an idea about that person or about that incident. So this invoking is the main idea, that just to give a certain idea about that person. So there was such a person and he had such figures, so we try to make it as clear as possible based on the information, and we want to convey the idea there was such a being called the Buddha or the Jesus Christ, whoever, and he may have looked like this based on the information that we have, and we show our respect towards that statue, or to show a respectful gesture at the statue. So that was the main purpose. So even the artist would know that he or she is not making an exact replica of the person, because unless the person has seen the thing, or there are photographs of the person. A person can gain a better understanding and feeling about the Buddha by looking at a statue than by hearing hundreds of words describing him. The more skilled the sculptor, the better the statue conveys this feeling to the viewer. And that is also very, very important, because we say a picture says 100,000 words. Looking now in our organs, in the way our mind is functioning, we are very sensitive, and we are very like open to. We are very closer to the vision that we have, rather than understanding what we have heard. Now, sound, we do hear sound. Hearing sounds is something else, and interpreting it into a meaning is something else. So what I meant is just getting an idea by listening to the words, and getting an idea or understanding something just by looking at it are two different streams. And most of the people, and I think it should be almost everyone, that we get a better understanding about the situation just by looking at it or seeing it than hearing the news or understanding it through words or reading it. So because we are more sensitive, it seems, to the act called vision, the thing called vision. That's why we say a picture says 1,000 words. It has it is more closer to us, so it gives a better picture or idea to us than the words than the words we hear or the words that we read. So if the artist is more skilled, he would be able to invoke a better idea about the Buddha or anyone else of whom he is making the picture, or about the event about the event. So he'll try to ingrain like most of the information as much as possible, and try to create an image or impression in the person about that, in the viewer about that particular person. The benefit of a Buddha statue lies in its ability to evoke a deeper connection to the Buddha. So that is the purpose. So the benefit is it makes us more closer to the Buddha than when we listen to the words. But some may have a different opinion on this. I agree with that, because some may say that they get more faith and more they feel more closer to the Buddha while listening to the sutra or while listening to the doctrine rather than seeing a Buddha statue. Yes, I understand this because we already have a programmed, like we already have a established idea that the Buddha statue would never look like the Buddha. We know that. In our minds, we know that. So when we listen to the story, we feel more close to the Buddha. But this would be different if we actually have seen him. If we happen to see the person and listen to his qualities or about his figure, then obviously we would be much closer and open, and we would appreciate seeing him rather than hearing his news. So therefore, the eye faculty plays a better role. Now, I hear Buddha had such and such figures, and I see him with my direct eyes. The same thing happens now if someone says there's a beautiful place in Europe, the person hears it, and the person goes there and sees it with his first-hand experience. Then, obviously, by seeing it, you are getting a better understanding, or you get more closer, or you have a more connection with that event or the place. In the same way, seeing the Buddha would have made a better connection with him in our minds, and if the person, if the artist or the artist is skillful in incorporating most of the information accurately and even the minute details, then he would be able to I would say evoke a better idea in the viewer's mind than the person is listening to the information. Now, by looking at a statue, one can bring the image of the Buddha into their minds. Wise people approach Buddha statues to pay respect to the Buddha because they feel a closer connection through the visual representation. So when I myself have personal experience on this, because in my earlier stage of monk life, when I used to pay respect to the Buddha, I used to do that closing my eyes. So I didn't like to see the Buddha statue, but I like to close my eyes and do the chanting. So I could visualize in my mind, inner mind, the qualities of the Buddha. Visualize means to go into the Buddha's qualities, and I felt very comfortable with that. So I was never a fan of doing chanting with open eyes. But now these days, what I do is whenever I do a chanting, I prefer to look at the Buddha. If the Buddha statue is very, very attractive, I prefer to look at the Buddha statue and do the chanting. Then I feel much closer to the Buddha than before. It may be due to my age or maturing as a person, or maybe due to some difference. I don't know. I cannot analyze that. Maybe I would have had the same connection if I had done that practice when I was a junior monk. But somehow now I feel like looking at the Buddha statue, because in our monastery we have a very nice looking Buddha statue, and it also is sitting on a very nice seat that was given by some devotees. So looking at it, I feel more connected to the Buddha. So I tend to do chanting these days with my eyes open and looking at the Buddha statue. So personally, I feel now I'm with the Renukane Chamdavimala Mahathera's idea. But before I didn't like looking at doing the chanting or doing Buddha Anusati, looking at the statue. I preferred it doing closing my eyes. Maybe you may also have this preference. But now personally I feel, in my case, I get a better connection with the Buddha when I'm doing the chanting and looking at him. So I'm a little bit unable to explain that. Each quality when we are chanting, it has some kind of a connection with the Buddha statue. So I feel more comfortable and happier doing that. So therefore, what Mahathera is saying, wise people approach Buddha statue. Wise doesn't mean that anyone who can do this is wise. The ones who value the Buddha statues, ones who are not looking down on these Buddha statues as something made out of bricks or something. Wise people approach Buddha statues to pay respect to the Buddha because they feel a closer connection through the visual representation. That's the point here. And this would be obviously, no one would have argued that if the Buddha was living, then if we, for example, imagine if we were paying respect to the Buddha while he was alive, if we were going to do a chanting, like you may not be able to, I don't think people would have got the opportunity to do the chanting in front of him. He would have said to stop that because it would have disturbed his peace actually. So, but there are occasions that people in past Buddhas and maybe in our Buddhas also, they have praised in front of him. Sometimes he would have allowed that to happen. And imagine if we had that opportunity to pay respect to the Buddha while he was alive. Okay, we bring some flowers and we offer it, and we have made, for example, we have made some verses with our eloquence or with our skills in grammar skills, language skills, and then we used to utter the gathas in our mother tongue. Would we do that closing our eyes or looking at the Buddha with open eyes? I think 10 out of 10 would do that looking at him. So what is the reason? We get a better connection with the Buddha when we do that, because we now eye is more. That's the point here. Our eye vision is more closer to our mind than the imagination. That's why even we start to use these visual things like when we are teaching. Some may have argued that these were not done in past days. Yes, they didn't have that technology. Maybe they would have developed a different capacity, imagining capacity, if they haven't used these visual things. But also we need to understand that sometimes they do show miracles and even show the hells and divine beings to some listeners. So they would get a direct experience on that. So sometimes with the visual represent, especially when we are teaching, rather than getting a philosophical or rather than assuming it accurately, sometimes we may get stuck in the visual thing that we have drawn. So, for example, when you study the Chitta Vittis, one may start to think that the Chitta Vittis are, when the person thinks about Chitta Vittis, he may see the letters in the Chitta Vittis. That exactly where Chittas are not letters, right? So sometimes that could be a barrier in understanding the exact nature of the realities, because we cannot ignore the image that we studied with. Anyway, but looking at the Buddha in the debate or in the argument of doing the chanting or reflecting the Buddha's qualities while he was alive, obviously, I think all of us would agree that praising him, because chanting means praising him actually. This is called tuti puja. Tuti means like you are thanking or you are praising the person. So about the qualities. And normally it was done in courts, in kings. They do praise the kings. Prashasti Gayana, we call it in Sinhalese. And it gives some morale to the king, and he will become very, very, very energetic thinking about his quality. But Buddha would never feel like that, because he is not expecting any appreciation from the person. But that's what we are giving, is we are praising his qualities. And if we were to do that, I think most of us, I think all of us would agree with that. We would do it looking at him, because it becomes more closer to us. So anyway, so that's why now when in the absence of the Buddha, we can use a Buddha statue for that purpose, and obviously it should be made nicer and evoking faith and happiness in our minds. I don't say that every Buddha statue is capable of doing that, but some Buddha statues are obviously capable of giving that serene feeling, and some artists are able to depict like his compassion wisdom and some other qualities in him, the happiness, the serenity, and it's very difficult. It's only a skilled person would be able to do that. Artist would be able to do that. So anyway, so Buddha statues are very valuable in this sense. It is important to remember that most statues created today do not perfectly resemble the original person. However, if a particular statue or picture brings to mind the image of someone, it is considered a representation of that statue. So because if that is the sign, it is a representation. So there is no argument in it. There is no argument that the Buddha statues represent the Buddha. Whether they resemble or whether they are whether they look exactly as the Buddha is a different case. If something is, now if this is the Buddha, I rather not to draw it. So if this is the Buddha, imagine if this real person was here, and if something is representing this, and if we get the idea of the Buddha by looking at it or seeing it, then this should be considered as something representing the Buddha. It's just a representation. This is not the actual Buddha. This is made out of some clay or some stones or whatever. The material itself doesn't have any value in it. Obviously, it is just a material thing, but it's just what matters is how we consider about it. And if we have come into an agreement, and if in our mind we have considered it as something to resemble the Buddha, then this should be considered as a representation. So what matters is, looking at it, we think about this person. It refers to this person. So it's just a means, helpful means for us to get the idea of Buddha into our mind. That's the main purpose of these Buddha statues. That's the main purpose. So similarly, any statue or picture that brings the Buddha to mind is considered a Buddha statue or image. Since looking at any Buddha statue today evokes the image of the Buddha, all these statues should be regarded as Buddha statues. Even though they do not resemble exactly the Buddha's actual figure, since they represent him, we have to consider them as Buddha statues. As such, they deserve respect. So they do deserve respect because we have come into unanimous agreement that these are Buddha statues. So even someone doesn't want to consider it, it's very difficult for him to get rid of this idea, because this is something that is respected by the people, and we also have that. It's very difficult now. If even a non-Buddhist would know that this is something that is representing the Buddha, and they have that feeling in it. Even now, a Buddhist would see the Jesus Christ picture or a statue, they should have that respect towards it, because he's a human being who had, according to them, he's the Son of God. But for us, he's a human being who had some very interesting and very good qualities. We may not agree with his view about the creation as it is explained in the Bible, but there can be conspiracies or opinions that he didn't teach this doctrine as mentioned in the Bible. I'm not going into that debate, but the common idea is he represents himself as the Son of God, but we would not accept that as Buddhists, because that would amount of accepting the creation. But we have to consider him as a human being who had very good qualities. Though we don't agree with the doctrine or the philosophy he taught, but the ethics that he brought into the world and the advices that he has given is obviously very valuable, and the tolerance he depicted showed. The compassion towards others are also very we have to appreciate that, and so when we see the statue of Christ, we have to have that feeling that this is a statue of a great person, of a great human being. And if someone starts to harm it or destroy it for whatever sake, they have that. It's very difficult to get rid of that idea that you are harming the statue of someone representing something. Then someone can argue, can't you break a Buddha statue just thinking is just matter, it's just a piece of wood, and I'm not considering about it. I'm not considering it as a Buddha statue. I'm just considering it as a piece of metal or piece of wood. And would I get akusala if I do that? I'm not sure whether people can do that. It will be very difficult because you have that feeling in it. It's very difficult to get rid of that. But another thing that's an interesting point. In Burma, when they make Buddha statues, they keep it on, like in the beginning stage. Yes, obviously when you are making the Buddha statue, you keep like huge ones. You have to keep it on the ground. You cannot just respect the. Now, since when you start to respect the statue? That's the point I want to bring up. So now think about making a statue out of a stone. Now, does the stone from the beginning deserve the respect? Obviously, seems not. But some would say yes. Some would say yes because it's been dedicated. Now, while it was in the mountain, did it deserve respect? Obviously not. So after it has been separated and brought in and dedicated, now this will be the Buddha. We are going to make a Buddha statue out of it. Does it deserve respect? According to Burmese culture, no. So then after you are making it, then still it's no. Like half made. Now the figures are coming out, and the body parts are visible. Now they are creating the image like slowly, from looking as a third party, you would feel like this seems to be a Buddha statue by looking the shape and all this. But still, it doesn't deserve respect. That's why they just climb on it, and they are not disrespecting it, but it is not considered as a Buddha statue yet. Then after it is been done, still it's not considered as it is not resembling the Buddha. Then they bring it and they place it in some place, in a respected place. Then they do a small event. Something, it's cultural actually. They do a small event. That is not necessary. But I felt like when I was in Burma, it had a lot of sense. Because it's an obvious question. Since when we start to consider this as a Buddha statue? While it is in the shop, do we consider it as a Buddha statue? Yes, you can do that. Then there can be a lot of practical issues in it. Because when we know a Buddha statue, we start respecting it. Obviously, we feel that. So in Burma, they don't consider it as a respectful object. It is a respectful object. They are not going to break it or step on it. But they are not giving that much attention or respect till that special occasion. Then they keep it on a place, a respected, like very nice place, nicely made place, arranged place, and they do a ceremony called Aneka Jati ceremony. The Buddha, just after his enlightenment, just immediately after his enlightenment, he uttered the verses of Aneka Jati Sansarang Samda Visanganibisa. And they chant this in the early morning. Normally this event is done in early morning. Even in Thailand they do. I participated once. It was done at a daytime actually. But in Burma they do it in the early morning. And they pour water onto the Buddha statue. And they chant Aneka Jati Sansarang verse, if I remember, for 7 times. And they sprinkle water here and there. And then after that ceremony, that is considered as a living Buddha. From that moment onwards, they start to respect it as a Buddha. So I felt like then we are very comfortable with that. So while we are bringing it, we are not much worried about it. Even it is kept on the ground, even it is kept somewhere, like in shops. Even in Sri Lanka, the big Buddha statues, you cannot keep them in the shop in a respected place. They just keep it on the floor. So it is disrespecting. According to Burmese culture, it is not considered as a real Buddha till it is been consecrated. Consecration happens in like kings, the consecration, right? But so here it's a consecration, and after that event is done, they start respecting the Buddha. It's something that is I personally try to adapt in my life when I get a statue. Not always, but when I keep it, and from that onwards, I start to respect it as the Buddha. So it's some I think most of you would have not thought about that. It's a culture found in Burma, and I found it very practical. So now one can argue, can we break a Buddha statue just thinking that it's a piece of metal or piece of wood or something? Can we destroy it without getting an akusala? That's another thing that we have to discuss, how to deal with the broken statues. Okay, so we'll come to that later. But if someone is like going to break a Buddha statue, thinking just now, for example, there is no problem for me to take a brick and put it on the ground and break. We are not going to get any akusala. I'm just breaking a brick. Even if there was no purpose for that, I can still do that. There's no any specific akusala in doing that. Can someone do that to a Buddha statue? Is a very key. Is a I would not say it's a pressing question because it's not, because I myself raised this question, but it is a question one can ask. Can someone do that? I personally believe it's very, very difficult. I think if someone wants to do that without getting an akusala, technically speaking, he has a point, because the person whom he argues say, because if I can break a brick, this is a piece of a brick, or this is a piece of metal or cement, then I don't consider it as Buddha. I'm just breaking it. Technically speaking, formula, he has a point, but I personally feel that when we have come into an agreement as a culture, and it is a statue that has been accepted globally now, even a foreigner would recognize Buddha statues. That's why in some countries they have written Buddha is not an ornament, or in some other foreign countries even they say the Buddha is not like ornament for decoration, and respect is common sense. They do say it, because sometimes they have images of Buddha in places that are not suitable. So respect is common sense. What does the government of those countries say? Because we have unanimously agreed he is one of the founders of the 4 main religions in the world, in the globe, and he deserves respect. And unanimously we have agreed that this is the statue of the Buddha. So it's an agreement in the entire globe now. Maybe not in forests in Africa or in tribes in Africa, but we do know, most of the people in the world know who is Buddha. So in that case, I don't think a person can just break a statue like he breaks a brick without getting that idea. I'm not exactly saying, but it seems very unlikely. So therefore, it is something that represents the Buddha, and we have come into an agreement whether we like it or not. That's the next point, whether we like it or not, because people are respecting it, and it has come into we have come into an agreement, and we acknowledge that, because even he may say, the person may say, the debater may say that this is just a piece of brick, but if you suddenly ask from him showing a statue of the Buddha, he would say it's Buddha, because his mind knows it's Buddha. So therefore, you cannot get rid of that idea. So that's why so it seems like this common agreement has come into our mind. Like even you see the statue of Barack Obama, for example, a wax statue, and we all know it represents Barack Obama. So likewise, a statue of Buddha represents the Buddha. And so therefore, and given the fact that he's such a high spiritually developed and respectable person, and truly he was such a person, regardless of the beliefs that you have, and breaking it seems like committing a sin. Then as such they deserve respect. So that's why they do deserve respect. It's not only Buddha, I would say most of the religious leaders deserve that respect, and Buddha deserves it because it has been unanimously agreed. So that's why even some governments have said, I don't know whether there are legal provisions in other countries. In Sri Lanka, obviously, you cannot disrespect any religion. And according to the law, you can have your opinions. Disrespecting and opinioning and debating are two things that we have to understand very clearly. But we cannot disrespect the Buddha, obviously, and not other religious leaders as well. And so Buddha statues do deserve the respect. Respecting a statue regarded as representing the Buddha is akin to respecting the Buddha himself. That's the next point here. Because we know that it is resembling the Buddha, so it's like showing the respect towards the Buddha. Showing the respect towards the Buddha. So if, for example, if someone goes and hit the wax statue of US president, what does it indicate? It indicates like you are showing disrespect towards that person. Someone goes and urinate on a statue of someone. What is the purpose of doing that? To show that. And why did some people in rebellions, why some rebels just break the statue of the leaders whom they don't like, whom they have chased away, whom they have killed or whatever? Saddam Hussein's statue was broken. What was the purpose? They just want to elicit or express their anger towards the specific person. I'm not appreciating doing that, but that's the purpose of doing that. So that's the exact purpose the rebels do when they destroy a statue of a person whom they fought against. If they couldn't capture the person, or even if they have captured and killed the person, still they want to disrespect the person. So that is the entire purpose, is to show the disrespect. If you think about the disrespect aspect, we'll also be able to understand the respecting aspect. Why did some broke Saddam Hussein's statue? I don't know whether they regretted it later. That's a different case. What happened after that, the chaos, that's a different story. But on that specific occasion, what was their intention? To show the disrespect towards their leader, whom they chased away, whom they didn't like. Maybe not the entire country, at least the ones who were against him. So, and do they consider that they have shown the disrespect? Yes. If you ask the rebels, they may have not believed in any Buddhist religion or doctrine. Maybe they were in a obviously they were the ones who did that would have been the army who invaded, or the people in the country who had a different religion. They may have not believed in about the karma as we do, but still, if you ask them, did you show what was your purpose? I just want to express my anger and show it and to disrespect the person. That's the exact thing. I wanted to do that by breaking its head. I have seen that video, how the statue was broken. They got into it and somehow broke it, and they somehow managed to bring it down. So, in the same way, if you are paying respect to that, if you are offering flowers to that, if you are offering perfumes to that, and taking incense sticks around it, and circumambulating around it, these are all gestures of respect. If we can disrespect a statue and satisfy our mean desires by doing that, the same way we are able to respect the statue and satisfy our devotion. So therefore, respecting, what was the purpose of breaking Saddam Hussein's statue? To disrespect him. And they would feel like their ill desire was satisfied. They couldn't capture him on the spot. He was captured later and he was hanged after a trial. But if you ask the rebels who broke it, yes, we somehow expressed our dissatisfaction with the person. Maybe they regretted later, that's a different case, but on that spot, they felt happy about that. In the same way, if you are respecting a Buddha statue, whatever we want, in whatever we desire, that's respecting the Buddha. That's respecting the Buddha. In most of these cases, when people argue about whether the person gets a karma or not, it's a different debate. We believe disrespecting is a bad karma, respecting is a good karma because of the status of the mind. We just forget about the argument whether the karma is accumulated or not when someone is arguing objectively, because once who argue that what is the purpose of paying respect to metal or something which is made out of bricks or something made out of cement, what is the purpose? No, it's a gesture of respecting. If we can disrespect a person by attacking a statue, the same way we can respect that particular person who resembles that statue through specific gestures. So, respecting a statue regarded as a representing the Buddha is akin to respecting the Buddha himself. Conversely, disrespecting such a statue is akin to disrespecting the Buddha himself. So therefore, Buddha statues deserve respect because Buddha himself deserves respect. Buddha himself deserves respect. So the word appatimo should not be translated as the Buddha had denied any statues about him. The word says that there is no person who could match his figure. That's the purpose. I hope I can do the next question. We have 35 minutes left. We'll see. I was going to, if we are unable to finish it, we'll just stop in the middle and we can take it to the next session as well. Because this new question, the next question, I would like to give some interesting information. When did the tradition of making Buddha statues begin? Did Buddha statues exist while the Buddha was alive? It's another very important pressing question. When did it start? As I have studied in school, the first Buddha statue is said to be made during the Emperor Kanishka's period. Kanishka. These are for the ones who are Sinhala readers. Kanishka. This is lingual sha. That's how we write in Roman letters. Kanishka, Emperor Kanishka's period. He's one of the very famous emperors in India, and he was a faithful Buddhist, devout to the sect of Sarvastivadians, if my memory was correct. Yes, Sarvastivadians. And he was the one who did their very great council in which he gave the patronage actually of the great council in which Vibhasas were written. I think 100,000 gathas were written for some books. They are commentaries for their Tripitaka. And during his era, Buddha statues were made. That's what I have, if my memory was correct, when I studied in grade 8 or grade 7. I exactly don't remember the grade actually. So it was in the first century AD. And we do see Buddha statues made by Greeks. They are very ancient in the northern side of India. In those statues, you may be surprised, maybe some of you have seen, the Buddha has a mustache. He has a mustache, visible one. I don't know whether, because he cut the hair according to our tradition, and according to Theravada tradition, it never grew up again after he cut his hair with his sword just after his renunciation. And it says that he even cut his beard. We say kesraul beva, like kesachedana. If my memory was correct, I'm not guaranteeing on that. Beard was also shaved. So I don't know how it could have been done with a sword. Maybe just cut the hair. Maybe my memory was not very good. But anyhow, was there any any at least small amount of beard or mustache in him, because it's one of the features of a man as we consider these days. The manly figures normally was it completely shaved? Monks are supposed to shave. That's a different case. Disciples cannot grow hair. We can grow it till 2 inches maximally, or 2 months. For 2 months we can go maximally for 2 months without shaving, or 2 inches. We normally shave the head and the beard together. In some traditions, they do shave the beard separately and shave the head shave the beard more frequently and shave the head less frequently at certain times. Anyway, another very interesting question: did the Buddha have at least some kind of beard in him? And according to Greek statues, he had mustache. I don't think he had I don't think he had a very obvious mustache like some as we see in some South Indian films. I don't think he would have had such a mustache, or like the famous David Boone in Australian cricket. I would not think like that. But sometimes I feel like he may have had some kind of a mustache, or at least some little bit of grown hair in his face. I haven't come into, but his face seems to be very bright and obvious, but our Buddha statues, we never show that mustache in him. We never mustache or the beard. Kind of thing we normally don't show it. So anyway, there's no such mentioning about it, specific mentioning about it. And his hair didn't grow after that. And but in the Greek statues, there is a mustache in some statues. And Greeks who came to India with the invasion of Alexander the Great, and they retained there. Some of their generals retained, especially the Seleucus Nicator and some other generals who divided his great empire into 4 parts and ruled them, and they eventually they had their own fights. And till Chandragupta Maurya chased them away from the Indian borders, Greeks were also controlling some areas, and even after that they were living in the surrounding area. And we have a very interesting book related to the Greek kings, a respected book which we call Milinda Prashna or Milinda Panha. It is a discussion that went through between King Menende, which we call Milinda in Pali. In Sinhalese we call Milindu. His Greek name is considered Menende, and if my memory was correct, and Nagasena, the intellectual priest, whom we consider as an arahant. And he was a descendant. This king was a descendant of the Greeks who were in the Indian regions. Anyway, so they also had built statues. Maybe according to historians, it's after Kanishka, because the most ancient, as we know, as we have now, is a statue they believe to be built in the 1st century AD. But in Sinhalese chronicles, there is information actually that during BC, some statues were built of some arahants who came to Sri Lanka with the 5 missionaries, Mahinda, Ittiya, Uttiya, Sambala, Bhaddasala. Out of these 5, of some statues were there. The information is there. They say that such statues were there, and some claim there are some statues in some temples, but I don't know how much archaeologically they have confirmed the age of those statues. But the chronicles, information is found in history books that Buddha statues were there even before the Christ in Sri Lanka. And in Burma, we have a legendary means a story, rather than saying it's legendary, I would say there's a story where Buddha visited Burma, and they believed he visited, I think 2 times in physical body. So then there are 5 arrivals of Buddhism to Burma. Out of them, on 2 occasions, the Buddha visited in person, and he made the Buddha statue called Mahamuni, which they believe is coming from the Buddha. And I'm not sure the historians would accept this idea. And it was first built means created by the Buddha. The statue is still there, and it is one of the main spots or like attractive places in tourism. A place where it's a place located in Mandalay, a very huge Buddha statue, which they call Mahamuni statue, which was created by the Buddha and blessed or given, like he gave some sort of supernatural thing into it, and they consider it is something very sacred. And it was in Rakhine state, and it was brought to Mandalay by a king, a very powerful king who ruled, because it was in a different country actually, and he invaded the country and brought it. And then we have another information coming from Hyun San's texts, and these are all recorded information. We don't find them physically. Physically means the statue is not found physically. That Hyun San says, I think his pronunciation pronunciation of his name is quite different in China, because once one of my friends told when I talked with her, she said the pronunciation is quite different, not Hyun San, they pronounce quite differently, but in Sri Lanka we call him Hyun San. Anyway, his records, like his travels in India, there is an information of a Buddha statue which was created while the Buddha was alive. Burma's story is also about a statue created by the Buddha. Now this one is a quite interesting story. When the Buddha went to preach Abhidhamma to the Tavatinsa realm, and King Udena was unable to stay for 3 months without seeing him, right? Without seeing him. Obviously, he spent more months without seeing him, but the Buddha was not in Kosambi all the time. But somehow he had a desire that he had some sort of, he was missing the Buddha, and he wanted someone to make a statue of him. And he selected a very skilled craftsman and introduced him to Venerable Moggallana, and Moggallana took him to the Tavatinsa realm and made him to see the Buddha. Have a close look at him while he was preaching Abhidhamma. Then he was brought back to the human world, and he created a statue which looks exactly like, very similar to the Buddha, not exactly similar to the Buddha. Then he started respecting that, and the story goes that after that, kings of India made some other statues, taking it as a replica. Replica means as an example. Made replicas of that statue. And Renukane Chamdavimala says, and then when the Buddha descended to the human world after preaching the Abhidhamma, and that Buddha statue stood up and paid respect to the Buddha, a miraculous event. And then Buddha invoked blessing, invoked sort of an order saying that you will protect the Buddha Sasana in my absence. So I think it seems like what the Buddha was saying, you will be representing me, and you have a huge responsibility of protecting me. Obviously, it is not a living thing. It's sort of a sign that given that Buddha statues would represent me in my absence, and obviously Buddha statues have played a huge role in our sasana for the longevity, because we feel more closer to the Buddha when there are Buddha statues. That's why sometimes in Sri Lanka there are many places the Buddha statues are made on roads, There can be opinions on that, whether it is respectful or not. I'm not going to comment on that, and don't ask questions on that even during the forum, because there can be opinions on that. These are very sensitive things, especially given the politics and all this. So anyway, so the purpose is, obviously Buddha statues have made a huge impact in our lives in the Sasana as well. And that story, Renukane Chamdavimala Mahathera says, is we cannot, because it's not recorded in Theravada tradition. So what he's saying is it's not possible for us to completely remove it or reject it, saying that it's not a Theravada thing. And there's another very nice story written, I think, Hyun San's or there was another traveler, not Itzing, there was Fahian, one of them in his travels in Sri Lanka. One of them traveled to Sri Lanka actually, and there was a story. A Buddha statue was made was placed in one of the chambers, and then there was a gem, valuable gem, at the forehead, maybe resembling the Urna Roma Dhatu, the sign which was on the head, maybe resembling that. So somehow, and there was protection to protect it, and one thief once went there, somehow managed to go in, and he was unable to. It was quite high, and he was unable to reach that. And the story goes, he said to the Buddha statue, "Venerable Sir, while you were fulfilling your paramis as a bodhisattva, you used to give your heads, eyes, flesh, blood to the ones who are in need of. And I'm a poor burglar or a poor man, so I'm in need of your gem, so I can make a living. So please give it back to me." Then not back to me, give it to me. I'm asking offering from you. And the story goes, the Buddha statue bended and let him take the gem. And the thief took it, and he went away, and he was captured later. Then when King really got angered by this event, that he stole the Buddha's gem, and then he argued, "No, I didn't steal it. I got it as a gift from the Buddha." Who would believe that? Then he said the Buddha statue bended and offered me, and the king sent a team to inquire it, and they found that the Buddha statue had actually bended. So then I think he was pardoned, or the king bought it. I forgot the exact story at the last part. He bought it from the burglar and placed it, so the burglar got some money for that. So he was not punished, because it was not stolen in the end, as the king believed that it was given to him by the Buddha statue. And Hyun San of Fahian says that statue is still bended by then. So anyway, so he wrote that even that in this country, in this island, which they called Thambapani those days, I think, even the burglars know Dhamma. They know how to steal using Dhamma, he said. Anyway, so these are very interesting stories related to the Buddha statues. Some of you may not take them very seriously. Anyway, so the thing is, when did the tradition start? According to records, we have some information saying that Buddha statues were there even while the Buddha was alive, or even from the beginning, like immediately after he has passed away. But archaeologically evidences, as if my memory was correct, it was during Kanishka's time. The oldest statue we find is Kanishka's time. That is not to say that the first statue was built during his time. There could have been statues and got destroyed before that. there's a very high possibility in it for that. And if statues of arahants were made in Sri Lanka, maybe there's another important thing, interesting point, that in Sri Lanka the devout Buddhists were afraid to make the Buddha statues. Maybe they were afraid to do that, thinking that Buddha's body cannot be made exactly as it is, and they would have felt that it is a bad thing to do that. Maybe surely such a thought pattern would have existed by then. It's also possible. So maybe they just made the statues of arahants. Anyway, and yes, so that also is a possibility. So anyway, I'll read the paragraphs. The creation of the first Buddha statue is not mentioned in the Tipitaka. Yes, obviously it's not mentioned in the Tipitaka. I don't think in Tipitaka we do have any mentioning about Buddha statues or its commentaries. It's not also mentioned in the commentaries. Not every historical incident is documented in these texts, and it is clear that many events from the past are not recorded in any book. That's also a valid argument. Just because something is not mentioned in the Tipitaka or the commentaries doesn't mean that it didn't exist. Because as far as I know, that there's no information saying that the Caesar crossed the Rubicon River. But obviously we know he did it when he came from Gaul to take control over Rome. Like there's no information are there, written information, but there's no historical proven evidences that he crossed the Rubicon. Obviously he would have crossed it, otherwise he would have not come here. So things are written, but you cannot, historically evidence, I don't think there are evidences for that. I have listened to this in a debate actually. And not every event in the past of the antiquity were written or recorded in books. That's also a possible thing. So just because something is missing doesn't mean that it didn't happen. And it's not a reason to believe even. That's another point. Yes, I agree with that. But it's not a reason to say that it didn't happen. One may say it's very unlikely to have happened. You can say like that, but you cannot come into a conclusion and say. The same thing happens like there are customs that we have in Buddhism, especially respecting the Buddha statues. Like you may not get an instruction given by the Buddha to pay respect to the Buddha statues. But that doesn't mean it violates the fundamentals. If someone says that there is no mentioning of Buddha giving Panchasila to the audience, would the Buddha appreciate we giving Panchasila to the people? Obviously he would say sadhu for that. There's no argument in that. Because he has applauded the practice of Panchasila. So if monks make them to observe that, because you cannot say that everyone is just taking Panchasila out as a tradition and not following it. There can be at least one person who is very serious, who would have felt like after taking from a respected monk that I have to keep it. There is a possibility. So when people are made to observe Panchasila before Dhamma talk, that is not against the Buddha's teaching just because it is not mentioned in the Tipitaka. If someone says like that, it shows his ignorance about the Dhamma, that's all. Because just saying that something is not mentioned in the Tipitaka, it doesn't invalidate that practice. It's a very important thing. We have to find out whether it violates against the basic fundamentals of the teachings. That's the most important thing. Whether this custom, even it originated later, does it violate the fundamental core essence of the teachings? When someone say pujas are rejected in Buddhism, who says this? We have all the information in the Tipitaka that the ones who got merits, got results by doing pujas, showing respect, by dana, then if you had to remove the entire apadana, then you would have said those books are later. There's no exact proof for that. They are the hypotheses that they are made based on early Buddhist texts. Looking at the language and all these, they're just hypotheses. There's hypotheses are there. Their suggestions are there. No one has proven that this text is late. They would say that they may be later, but books in the Khuddaka Nikaya, They are very ancient, even according to ancient Buddhist, early Buddhist traditions. Early Buddhism means like the ones who are doing this research on it. Jatakas are very old according to them. So we cannot just reject and say that these are later ones. I have seen some monks saying that Atanati is a later one. So there is no demons mentioned in the Buddhist text. Come on, how on earth you say that Atanatya is a later thing? It's just because it doesn't match with the view that you have on Buddhism. So I don't believe in demons. So the Buddha it is not possible that the Buddha have talked about demons, and you are not convinced about demons. So everything about demons are later additions. Come on, this is not the way you argue on that. Just because it doesn't match with your wisdom or vision or the philosophy, you are just removing all the past that you want and keeping all the things that you prefer. And also taking the research, modern research that was done as the gospel truth. That's not the way that we have to argue. One can have an opinion that seems like they are later on. You can have an opinion, but you cannot just highly reject it. No, that's not the way to argue. You can have an opinion. In my opinion, this seems like this and this. But if someone argues that just because something is not mentioned in the Tipitaka, the tradition is false, then he has got the Buddhism completely wrong. Not only Buddhism, in any religion, in any tradition, there is a possibility. Any fundamental discourse community, we call it. In any discourse community, there can be interpretations that have come later than its founder. The thing what matters is, does it violate the basic fundamentals of the discourse community? If it doesn't, it should be taken as something applicable or something that is in align with the mainstream. So therefore, what Thera is telling, just because things are not mentioned in Tipitaka or commentary doesn't mean that they didn't happen. It didn't happen. And also I have to add, just because something is not mentioned in Tipitaka doesn't mean that it is going against the Buddha's teaching. Some are saying that giving Panchasila is against Buddhism. Come on. This shows the ignorance that you have about Buddhism. Just utter ignorance, that's all. Because Buddha has praised the Panchasila. It's considered as the Aryakanta Sila in sutras. So if a monk is encouraging others to take Panchasila before a Dhamma talk or before a donation, maybe the person observed it or not, doesn't matter. Isn't it beneficial? Isn't it helpful to that person? Even at just for that moment? Doesn't he get at least some kind of wholesome thought? Yes, that Buddha would have appreciated that. Yes, there's a story that Venerable Sariputta, there's a nice story, something to add. He used to give Panchasila to people who are interested or not interested. And Buddha said he didn't appreciate that, because whenever he sees a fisherman, he gives Panchasila. And then out of respect to Thera, they just keep silent and observe, and they go on fishing. Monks felt, come on, what Sariputta is doing? It doesn't make sense. You give Sila to ones who request only. So that's why in Burma, Sila is given only after they request for Sila. The devotees have to request for Sila before a ceremony. Then we give the Sila. That's the real way of doing that. But here, even now, we are giving it, but they have come to listen to the Dhamma talk. And they have dedicated their minds to a religious cause, even for that moment. So it's not, giving Sila before a Dhamma talk is not a forceful act, like what Sariputta did. Buddha didn't appreciate what Sariputta did because he was forcing others to take Sila. And they took it just because they cannot ignore it. But the ones who are coming to Dhamma, there may be one or two people who may not like, but the majority would appreciate giving the Sila and they would accept that. And obviously it supports the merit as well, according to our teachings. So just because something is not mentioned in the Tipitaka doesn't mean that it is not it is against the main core teachings. No, if someone says that there can be some things that are against the teaching which are not mentioned in the Tipitaka. So what matters is you have to evaluate it based on the fundamentals. If someone says giving Panchasila is something against the teaching, so it is not mentioned in the teaching, so what? Maybe it's not mentioned. It's not mentioned that anyone gave Panchasila before Dhamma talk, but it is applicable. It can be done. Buddha would not have rejected this when you look into the teachings. So just because something is not recorded, just because something is not mentioned, it doesn't mean that it didn't happen, and doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that it is against the tradition. So, however, I'll just read this paragraph and we'll take this for the next session. However, there is an account in the writings of Chinese monk Xuanzan, I don't know how to spell it, also spelled as Hyun San, related to a Buddha statue. According to this account, when the Buddha visited the divine realm of Tavatimsa to preach Abhidhamma, he spent the entire Vasa there. During this time, King Udayana of Kosambi found it unbearable not to see the Buddha for 3 months. To remedy this, he sent a sculptor to the divine realm with the help of Venerable Mahamoggallana. The sculptor was instructed to carefully observe the Buddha's appearance. Using this observation, he crafted the Buddha statue with a core made out of sandalwood. When the Buddha returned to the human world, the statue is said to have stood up and paid respect to the Buddha. The Buddha then bestowed the responsibility of dispelling wrong views among the people and protecting the Buddha Sasana to the statue. It is not possible to verify the accuracy of this account. In ancient times, travelers often recorded that what they saw and heard, not for commercial purposes, but to preserve knowledge and incidences for the posterity. There is no reason to believe these accounts were false. The Chinese monk likely documented the story as he heard it from the local people. The statue mentioned in the story is said to have been located in the city of Kosambi. The local people would not have had any reason to deceive the monk. Obviously, they would have not purposefully deceived him. They would have surely reported what they knew. They likely recounted the story as they had come to know it. Therefore, we cannot fully dismiss this story as false. Furthermore, it is mentioned in the same text that other kings also began to make Buddha statues, making that statue as an example. Then I'll take the remaining part later. There are a few things that I would like to talk in bringing Abhidhamma as well, and hopefully we'll be able to finish this handout next day, and then I'll give you a new handout next time. So I'll conclude the lecture. And today we talked a few things about the Buddha statue. Miscellaneous stuff also was brought in, so I'm unable to summarize what we talked, and 1.5 questions were discussed, and hope you got some insights about the Buddha statue and the culture related to paying respect to the statues, and I give you hope you enjoyed it, give you the opportunity to ask questions. The forum is open.
The Chipanjan Venerable, I have a question about the creation of Buddha statue. Began during the reign of King Kanishka. Why does since King Kanishka was a ruler who followed the Mahayana doctrine, and just that mean the creation of Buddha statue is also Mahayana's concept, and is it aligned with the Theravada Buddhist?
He was not a Mahayanist. He was a Sarvastivadins, which were a sub-branch of the Theravada group. Sarvastivadins were part of Theravada actually. They emerged from the Theravada sect. Not from Mahayana was a very later development actually, especially from the Mahasangika sect. And there are some influence of the Theravadis as well, as far as I know. But Kanishka was a Theravadi. Theravadi means in the bigger sect of Theravadins. There were 12 subsects in the Theravada group, and We are one of them. We are considered as the mainstream. Kanishka was a follower of Sarvastivadins, but it is in line with the Theravada tradition. Because in the last two lectures, I was talking that this doesn't violate any Theravada fundamentals. And historically speaking, archaeologically, they believe it's happened in the Kanishka's period. But the making a statue and respecting him is in line with the Theravada traditions. I will be explaining this in the next lecture actually, and how it is valid. Why is respecting statues is in line with the Theravada teachings. I will explain it next time.
We have heard that with the statue created by following scriptures, and then however, if an artist sculpts a Buddha statue based on the image of the Blessed One that has formed in his own mind, is there any fault in that?
I don't see any fault as long as he has the respecting attitude. If he doesn't purposefully make it ugly or negligent, like purposefully neglect the specific features, and I don't think there is any disrespect in that or an akusala in that. He's trying his best to make it as possible. Even when we were child, we drew Buddha statues, Buddha's pictures in drawings. So there is no such a harm in it. Even though he obviously we are going to make things that are in our mind, right? We are unable to create things that we haven't visualized, and it doesn't mean that while we are making with our hands, what is in our mind will always be represented in the statue. There should be some kind of differences in it, and there is no harm in it actually, as long as he maintains the respectful attitude, and if there is no intention of creating like disrespect or making the statue unattractive, if it's not done purposefully, even it mistakenly happened to be something unattractive, there's no akusala in it.
May Trikajans bless you, Swami Namaste. I have heard about Buddha statues are not created until Buddhism is established in the country. Before Emperor Kanishka's time, Buddhism was not widely spread in India.
Kanishka ruled the upper region of India in 1st century AD. 1st century AD. Buddhism spread into 9 quarters of the world out of the subcontinent of India during the 3rd century BC. So Buddhism got its footings in Sri Lanka before the Christ was born. So Buddhism had a very strong hold in Sri Lanka by then, by the 1st century AD. So, but we don't have any. I think historically there may have been, I don't know whether Buddha statues were there, but statues of arahants were recorded, not found and recorded. I don't know when did the Buddha tradition of making Buddha statues in Sri Lanka started, but by the era of Kanishka, Theravada Buddhism had spread into other countries, and in India it was already there. It was always there, and it was divided into various countries, and Chandragupta and Asoka united India as a country, except the southernmost parts of the peninsula. So it was well established in countries actually by then. Even from the Buddha, like, did Buddhism got the status of state religion by the era of Buddha? According to our commentaries, and there were like huge amount of Buddhists in Savatthi by then, and I don't know how accurate the numbers were. They were talking about not billions, but like 70 millions or something like that. I don't know whether a country had that much of a population by then, according to historical facts. The literature says, and it was, I don't know whether the kings were Buddhists. Actually, they followed Buddhism. Bimbisara was a Buddhist according to our tradition. Kosala went refuge under the Buddha, but whether they made it a state religion, I'm not sure. Even Asoka didn't make it a state religion actually. In Sri Lanka, it became the foremost religion, but I'm not sure whether it was stated as a state religion by then. But it was well established in Savatthi and in Rajagaha while the Buddha was there. But other religions were also existing in the contemporary time. Then I don't know how you got that information that Buddha statues were not made till it got very well established in a country, because by the time of Buddha, Buddhism was well established in many regions of India.
I got it, Swaminas. I got another question.
Yes.
It's my personal experience. When I practice Buddha Anusati Bhavana, I naturally visualized the beautiful Buddha statue. However, as I continued meditation, I realized that I was admiring the beauty of the image rather than focusing on meditation. So I decided to stop visualization, and I made great effort to suppress my thoughts.
The visual.
And I tried to follow the statements of the. I know the purpose of Buddha Anusati is, as far as I know, is to cultivate faith and respect Buddha's great qualities, concentrating on specific aspects of Buddha's qualities. And my question is, can this approach help reduce attachment to the visual form and deepen the meditation?
I hope it's not. I hope it's not fully suppressed. I hope still you have that ability to visualize the Buddha. Do you?
Yes.
That's a good thing.
I visualize a beautiful Buddha image.
That's a good thing.
And
that's a good thing that I envy you in that sense, actually, if you can do that, because sometimes when we have gems, we don't know the value in it. So, for example, when you contemplate the Buddha's statues, Buddha's qualities, think about the attribute of Bhagava and Sugata. Sugata and Bhagava. We talk about the Buddha's physical beauty. It is also one of his attributes. Possessing the 32 parts of a great man is an attribute of the Buddha. Why it is an attribute? Why it is an attribute?
I thought it was an attachment.
No, let me finish. Let me explain this. Why is it an attribute? According to Buddha himself, he got it not out of luck or out of a random incident. It's because of his own paramis that he fulfilled in his past lives. So having 32 body parts means that he has done all these merits to obtain them. And those merits are obviously supportive and habitually in him. So seeing that, this obviously seeing, if he had felt like, if you had met him obviously, just by seeing we would have guessed that this is a special person. Sometimes seeing some I'm not talking about the mere beauty. When you see some beings, some humans, you sometimes feel like this is a very intelligent person. Some have that kind of appearance, that feel, that their like status is like that. their physical appearance, their figure gives an impression in us that this person is intelligent, and for the really intelligent beings there is such a outer appearance, and Buddha was such of that caliber, and especially given the 32 body parts of the Buddha, they obviously depicted his insight to some extent, and we do take it as one of his qualities. How do we say anuttaro? Uncomparable. There is no one who is above him. In what sense? In sila, samadhi, panya, vimutti, jnana dasana, in virtue, concentration, wisdom, liberation, the reflecting knowledges, in the skill of preaching Dhamma, and in his beauty. There is no one to compare him. So just contemplating on the Buddha's beauty and having faith is one form of Buddha Anusati. If you look into Venerable Renukane Chamdavimala Mahathera's books, I think this was given in Vidarshana Bhavana Krame. I hope I am correct. But it is exactly, truly given in one of his books. There was one technique developed by one of well-renowned Burmese Mahathera, that you visualize the Buddha's image and keep on admiring is not in terms of attachment. You just keep on admiring that how beautiful his figure was in wholesome mind. It's then a subtle liking would have happened, like what happened to Akkali, but that is not going to hinder your practice. So for the beginners, the Mahathera has said that ones who are unable to visualize, they were given, I think you need to mute yourself while listening because we can hear the sounds. So but the ones who are unable to visualize clearly were told to go in front of a beautiful, attractive Buddha statue and look at its body parts, keep on looking at its body parts till he gets that image into the mind and till he develops the capacity of visualizing it. Because this visualizing aspect is not found in everyone. There is a grading according to psychology. That some people are very bad in visualizing. I myself is a very bad visualizer. Very bad. But some can visualize the image and very, very clearly. So I consider them gifted in this sense. That's why I said I envy you when you say that. But it's a good thing. So the ones who are unable to visualize, they were told to go in front of a Buddha and observe the body parts for few days continuously, and then just because of like observing Khasina, not in the same way, but keep on observing that. So then they will have a clear image in their mind, and they keep on contemplating the Buddha's beauty in that sense, because the 32 body parts of the Buddha are one of his attributes. They are not only mental attributes, physical attributes. These physical attributes indicate his parami. Then you should have a question, what did he do to Akkali? He chased him away. That was because he didn't practice vipassana. He was just observing the Buddha and he was just spending time on him, on looking at him. The commentary says Buddha had to reduce his faith. His faith was too much. It doesn't say that he accumulated raga by looking at it. No, he was not having a slight attachment would have happened. That is obvious as a putujana. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. We cannot get rid of all the attachments from the beginning. So obviously if Buddha was alive, we ourselves would have loved him, and we still love him. So even Ananda loved him, being a Sotapanna, and that's why he cried actually when Buddha passed away. So don't worry about that, because if you are concentrating and admiring his body parts means like in a faithful way, because this is obviously we feel like it's not easy to obtain these body parts, that figure itself. That's why I said sometimes when you see some beings, Buddha's body was never attractive to, I don't think it was attractive to lust. It was something that like evoke respect in us. He was handsome to the utmost level, no defect in his body, but I don't think I haven't seen stories like people having strong lust towards the Buddha's figure, especially after he got enlightened. During his Bodhisattva life, yes, obviously Yasodhara and the others would have had lust towards it. And Kisa Gotami, who uttered the Nibbutapada, fell into him actually. He was a very attractive young man, no doubt about that. But like he was more into like a figure that would like evoke respect and all these things. So and this is applicable to Chakravarti kings as well. People never feel enough looking at them, and obviously people felt never enough looking at the Buddha's figure. Vakkali's case, he was not practicing Buddhism. Vakkali case, he was not practicing Vipassana in it. He was covered by Saddha, and he was moved by Saddha, and that is the only refuge that he felt. So Saddha was overflowing. So other faculties were not functioning. So he had to lower down the Saddha. In order to lower down the Saddha, what they have to do is, given in the instructions given in commentaries, take the object of your faith and try to see the elements in it, or the real organs in it. So that's why Buddha said, so when you try to analyze the Buddha's figure in 32 body parts and elements, non-self elements, then the wisdom starts to flourish and the Saddha starts to go down, because wisdom and Saddha cannot stay like, when one is stronger, other gets lower. So when Saddha is too high, you have to increase the level of wisdom, so then they would get balanced at one time, at one place. So in order to do that, what the Dhamma is saying, commentaries are saying, analyze the object of your faith in terms of realities, or in terms of their true nature. So that's why Buddha said, what is the purpose of looking at my repulsive body? Yes, it is an object of admiration, it is an object of respect, it is an object to be contemplated as an object of Buddhanusati. No doubt about that, no argument in it. But if someone is indulging in it and not balancing the faculties and only entertaining the faith faculty, then the other faculties would go down, or would not match with this faith. And when the faculties are not balanced, one cannot achieve accomplish the achievements. Indriyanang ekarasata eva atta siddhi, no anyatha. There's no other way you can accomplish the spiritual achievement without the balance of faculties. So, in order to reduce Vakkali's faith, not the lust. Dhamma doesn't say Vakkali had lust towards the Buddha. He had to reduce the faith of Vakkali. Yes, when you have excessive faith, it can easily get aligned with lobha. I don't say Vakkali didn't have any lobha. Vakkali was entertaining faith actually, looking at the Buddha's figure. And he was given the foremost in faith by the Buddha himself in Anguttara Nikaya. So looking at the Buddha's figure, you can develop faith, and it is a mode of Buddhanusati. That's why Renukane Chamdavimala Mahathera, without telling the readers to do the contemplation of the attributes, he said to focus on the Buddha's figure and contemplate it. Buddha's Rupakaya, that is also a mode of Buddhanusati, because Buddha's body is also one of his qualities. And you can reach the level of Upachara Samadhi by doing that. But if you had the opportunity of visualizing a very beautiful Buddha image, which I envy obviously, don't give up that, don't suppress it. You don't suppress the good qualities. On what world we do that? That's a great opportunity that I ask. If you are not suppressed it, that if you are not lost that capacity, please use it. And I would insist you to do that, and spend more time in that, and develop your faith. It's not about attachment. It's about the faith, and your mind would be purified. I think you would have observed that your mind would not get attacked or invaded by lust or anger or delusion at that time. It was a very pleasant experience, isn't it? So that is the wholesome mind. Maybe later you liked it. Anyone who do meditation likes the meditation. Who does meditation likes meditation. Anyone who had a good experience in Anapanasati get attached to that. That is obviously a type of a lobha. If someone gets attached to jhana, it's called bhavaraga. That's why we have vipassana, to get rid of that. While someone who is practicing samatha obviously get attached to the samatha meditation. That doesn't mean that you have to stop samatha meditation and always be in a detached mind towards the samadhi. Okay, that is why vipassana is given, so you can do it at a later stage. Don't think about these things. There is no attachment to that. It's not about attachment. You are just attached to the experience that you are having, and you are liking the Buddha, and it's a good sign. You are appreciating your teacher's beauty. And Vakkali, when he was sent, he went to commit suicide. And then Buddha showed himself again. That's the time his sorrow went away, seeing the Buddha, and then he uttered the words. He became an arahant. And Vakkali was foremost in faith, not foremost in the one who got attached to the Buddha. His faith faculty was overflowing. So it has to be reduced. For others, commentary says, faith faculty had to be increased. Therefore, if you can visualize, do it as much as possible. And focus on the good 32. Learn about the 32 body parts of the Buddha. I would recommend you. Learn about the 32 body parts and contemplate those 32 body parts. Means not Kesaloma, 32 signs of a great man, what I mean. Then you will be able to make this image more and more attractive, because the ones who can visualize create images. That's the capacity that people have. That's why you can visualize things. And you can go into minute details even. So I would suggest you to study anyone who is capable of visualizing. That's my advice. Study the 32 signs of a man and try to visualize the Buddha as a great. Then, in addition, if you feel like discontent, because people get contented when contemplating the Buddha's attributes, if you feel I'm just focusing on the visual aspect or the physical aspect, you can bring the qualities. Just looking at the Buddha statue contemplates the other qualities. Just don't remove that statue from your mind. Keep it as the base. That is the object, because many people struggle in Buddhanusati because they cannot visualize something. Visualization is not compulsory, but if you can visualize, it's a great gift that you have.
Thank you so much, Venerable Thero. May Triple Gems bless you. It's very crystal clear. I'm very happy, because sometimes I ask my children to visualize Buddha statue or Buddha image. So I'm very happy. Thank you ever so much for your great explanation and clarification. May Triple Gems bless you.
So I have another 2 minutes. It was not very clear. When a statue breaks, doesn't the mind fall upon the unwholesome rather than the cause? Isn't that the mind that is driven by the unwholesome? Because it's not very clear to me.
If the statue breaks, yes. What is the question?
So break the thing is that when you break,
Purposefully break, deliberately break.
statue, because it's very,
Okay.
it's unwholesome thing.
Obviously, if you are breaking a Buddha statue, it's because
does the mind fall
Because when you have accepted that is a Buddha statue, what is the purpose of breaking it?
We see some people they break and then
Sorry?
we see there are people who break statues and then doesn't that mind fall upon the wholesome rather than the coarse?
False and unwholesome rather than the cause. What does it mean?
Which is akusala.
When a statue breaks, I'm trying to formulate the question. When a statue breaks, rather than falling into unwholesomeness that the statue broke, shouldn't we contemplate on the cause? Is it?
To fall upon the unwholesome rather than the cause.
Cause of breaking, right? Yeah, that's if a Buddha statue breaks, that's the obvious resort that you have to go. You have to contemplate the cause. That's what happened. Forget about the Buddha's statue breaking. When the Buddha's body broke, he died and he was burnt. And Ananda was not happy. And what did Buddha say? Where can you find something permanent that would not break? If something has a reason, it will break down. So it can be many causes why a Buddha statue would break. Buddha would die naturally, pass away naturally. It's a death fell upon him. We call it parinibbana because he didn't have any rebirth, but he died actually. So when a Buddha dies, or when a Buddha statue breaks, the same thing to be applied. But the advice given by Buddha to Venerable Ananda. So how can you expect something to be permanent? How can you wish something not to break while things are conditioned? So if a Buddha statue breaks, or someone deliberately breaks, or if you have seen someone has broken, rather than going into unwholesomeness, feeling sad or feeling angry about the person, we have to consider about the causes and effects, and that was bound to get break one day, and if it is possible, prevent it.
I think
that's all, right? Okay. And may all of you be able to pursue the Dhamma and also attain the Nibbana one day. May this merit be shared with everyone who has gathered, and finally the ones who listen, may everyone be able to gain more Dhamma knowledge, adhere to spirituality, and be born in good destinations after death, and finally attain the liberation as soon as possible. So we share merits with dead relatives. Idang vo nyati nang hotu sukita huntu nyatayo. Idang vo nyati nang hotu sukita huntu nyatayo. Idang vo nyati nang hotu sukita huntu nyatayo. Akasattha ca bhummattha deva naga mahiddika. Punyantang anumoditva chiran rakkantu sambuddha sasanang. Akasattha ca bhummattha deva naga mahiddika. Punyantang anumoditva chiran rakkantu sambuddha desanang. Akasattha ca bhummattha deva naga mahiddika. Punyantang anumoditva chiran rakkantu sambuddha savakan chiran rakkantu tan sada. Imina punya kammena mame bala samagamo satan samagamo hotu yava nibbana pattiya. Imina punya kammena mame bala samagamo satan samagamo hotu yava nibbana pattiya. Imina punya kammena mame bala samagamo satan samagamo hotu yava nibbana pattiya. Idam me punya kammang asawakkaya vahang hotu. Idam me punya kammang asawakkaya vahang hotu. Idam me punya kammang asawakkaya vahang hotu. Sabba dukkha pamunchatu.